So,
Awesome.
hello. Hi, my name is Sarah Kellogg, and I am here tonight to interview my friend and partner in crime, as she called me a couple of weeks ago, for our Testimony 2 series, Amy Cassels. And we're going to talk about migraines. I know that a lot of people deal with headaches, and whether they've been diagnosed with migraines or not, but Amy has a history, and we're going to dive in and talk about this personal testimony. We don't diagnose or treat. We just share what we've been through. Right, Amy?
That's right.
All
So,
right.
so what would you like to ask me first?
Yeah. So what I want to know is how long have you been experiencing migraines? Like, when did they first start for you?
I remember getting headaches first starting in about first or second grade.
Oh, wow. Was it related to your vision? Like when
At
you were that
first, yes,
first?
that was the
Okay.
first thing that they did.
All right. And what were your symptoms? First or second grade? That's really young to be dealing with headaches.
I don't remember them being really bad, but I just remember having a headache where I couldn't focus and I couldn't think. So I would just want to cry in the classroom because I felt behind all the time.
I have struggled with migraines myself, and I can't imagine doing that as a child. Like, learning new things at school was hard enough at times, then to not feel good on top of it and
Yeah,
understand why, right? Like, that's
for
a
sure.
lot. So, as they progressed, right? So you said it started in first or second grade. So then obviously that they had progressed or changed. What were those symptoms that you've had over the years? Because obviously you're not in elementary school anymore. So,
Well, as I got older, they would get more intense. So they definitely increased in their intensity once I hit, menstrual age. So
right.
I was starting at about, I think I was about 14 years old. And I just remember them taking a turn for the worse. But I never calculated it or correlated it with hormones. So back, in the 90s, people didn't really pay attention to your hormone cycle. So we didn't know what to do at that time. But
Right.
I just looking back, because I'm thinking about the grade and where I was and things I was doing. And they definitely increased in intensity to the point where my mom would just give me one of her migraine pills.
Right. So your mom had migraines too.
And
That's
my
interesting.
grandmother.
And your grandmother. That's very interesting to
Yes.
me. From the nursing perspective and a person who enjoys some genealogy stuff, that's very interesting to me. I too have dealt with this, so I understand. And I have used to take medications and different things. And so were you ever on prescriptions, or do you take them now?
I do not take any prescriptions now, but whenever I was in high school, my mom would just give me her migraine pill, and I think that was Zomig at the time. And my primary care physician would just give me Zomig or Imitrex. Well, once I started college, that is where they increased to the point where I would vomit and I would have to miss school. And I, at that time, I was seeing a neurologist. So they did all the MRIs, they did all the exams. I saw the neurologist. I would see her on a consistent basis. And the peak of my, well, I guess I would say the peak of my point with her, where things were the worst, and why I went to see the neurologist in the first place, was because I was getting migraines 3 to 4 times a week. And I would have to miss my college classes, or I would just have to go and then be absolutely miserable. I couldn't even,
Definitely
I
not
don't even know
retaining.
how I did it. I don't know how
Yeah,
I
you're
did
not
it.
retaining anything at that point.
And then I worked at Outback in Conroe, and I would literally be waiting tables, and then I would go to the restroom and I would puke, and then I would come back out, and then, finish waiting tables, and nobody knew what I was going through, but it was so loud, and I was trying to take people's orders. It was just really bad. So at that point, that was whenever we decided, okay, we need to go to the neurologist instead of the primary care physician. So
Right.
I want to say I was like 19 or 20, and no, I was about 19. And they put me on, they had me on an antidepressant. They had me on a drug for high blood pressure. And then they had me on something called Topamax, which is an anti-seizure medication, which the Topamax is the anti-seizure is because a migraine is like having a seizure in your brain.
Right.
So the problem is that it did, they helped. So the Topamax works to prevent a migraine from coming on. So you have to be consistent. Well, the problem is that she had me on such a consistent or such a high dose that it was causing me to have really, really bad like mood ups and downs, because I'm not a super moody person. You know, I'm pretty happy most of the time. And it was making me to a point where I was crying. Like I would cry over everything.
Right.
Everything.
That's
I
not
dropped
good.
something and I cried. No.
Oh no. So it sounds like that you went through a whole lot to, I mean, to deal with that and having to be trying to do school, and then the anxiety that goes with not being in class, and all of those emotions that go with that, in addition to the pain. Did you have visual changes too? Like, did it affect your vision? And did you get any of the migraine blindness or the ARIA and the stuff that people talk about?
Well, it wasn't necessarily that. It's just like where I would have an aura or it'd be a white light or blind or something. Really what it just boils down to is my eyes were just sensitive. Like if the TV was going off or there were lights or really just bright light, I was bothered by light. The light would cause me, like I couldn't even open my eyes. So
Okay.
in that sense, I couldn't see, but it wasn't like some people where they see this aura come on
Right.
and there's no pain. That was always, the eye stuff was always afterwards.
Okay. Yeah.
So
It's very interesting because migraines, just like everything else, it can be very individualized to that person. So before we go into the shift and what you're doing now, I have a question. What's the craziest method or technique that you ever tried? Like I've seen these things on Facebook and places where you put cold stuff here, hot stuff here, stand on your head, take this, drink that. What's the craziest thing you ever tried?
uh you know, I mean, people are sweet, but they're always like, do the hand thing or this or that. And I mean, it's like, that didn't work. I mean, I could squeeze it all day long and they're like, you just have to keep squeezing it. No, it literally doesn't work. Like this is
Right.
crazy serious, it just doesn't work. My grandmother would tell me to put heat on my stomach or my feet to pull the heat down. That
Yeah.
also didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the kinds of things. So what was the shift? So you just shared with us that we were all these medications, 3 different types of high profile meds prescribed by a neurologist. So you're at a specialist, they're giving you all this stuff. It's working some, but causing huge side effects. What made you go, I can't live like this. I need to change and try something different?
Well, so there have been multiple shifts through the years, but remember how I told you that I got super emotional and I would just cry all the time? So
Right.
after I was on this huge dose of Topamax, I was out to eat with my mom and my sister, and she was just in high school at the time. We went to Carrabba's and I was eating a salad, and a Caesar salad. And my sister took her fork and reached over and grabbed a bite of my salad. And I flipped out and started crying that she took a bite of my salad. And my mom goes, Amy, what is the matter with you? Like, what is that medication that you're on? What are the side effects? So we ended up bringing that back to the doctor and telling her, this is making me crazy. I'd lost, so right now with my body, I am, right now I'm 155. I went down to 132 pounds. So
Wow.
I was, more than 20 pounds. I can't do math in my head, but it was more than 20 pounds lighter than I am now. I was very skinny. I'm normally a big boned girl. So like I need some meat on my bones. So I got very skinny and it was making me crazy. So we ended up getting off that high dosage and we brought it down. And then we got off the antidepressants. My mom did not want me on the antidepressants. And we got off the blood pressure because it was making me tired. And, you know, I'm a college student. I'm 19. Like, I shouldn't be on high blood pressure medicine. It's ridiculous. Like, I was her. I remember going back to the neurologist all the time and she would say, let's try this. Let's try that. So, basically they skimmed it down to 2 medications, one for if I get a migraine, and then the Topamax, which was the anti-seizure. So I stayed on that until 2005. I want to say I was like 23 or 24 at the time, I think 24. And basically I was at a fitness training, and at the fitness training I was with a bunch of other ladies that were all in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and I was the youngest one there, and they were all kicking my butt in the workouts. We were all doing this fitness instructor training for body pump. And I was having to constantly worry about getting a migraine. So I wasn't doing much weight. I didn't want it on my neck. I couldn't do that. And then I ended up getting a migraine anyway. And I just remember going, I am so tired of these migraines. So my mom had told me about doing a candida cleanse and working with a doctor to get off of all of this medication. So that's what I did. I started, I went to a doctor in Houston, and I can't remember the name right now, but this was back like, 2005. So, or 2004, they got me off all my medications, and then they started looking at my hormones, and then they started looking at my diet. And that is whenever I did a full candida cleanse, a very strict candida cleanse. And if you've ever had your glasses fog up, which you have glasses, so you probably do have them fog up every now and then, it was as if my whole life I had foggers on. And it was like foggy glasses. And I took them off, and then all of a sudden I could see clear.
After the cleanse?
After the cleanse.
Okay.
After the cleanse. Wow. It was like I could see. I didn't have this pressure in my head. I lived every day with this pressure in my head that I was a ticking time bomb. It was like this little tiny, nerves in my brain they were just waiting for something to set it off.
Your trigger. Yeah.
Yes. And then
so what are your triggers? Like, we talked about vision, we talked about hormones, you mentioned some food maybe, like.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I narrowed it down to this, and they all kind of umbrella. So I'll go through them, but just to give you an idea of what I'm going to say, sound, sleep, odors, lights, alcohol, sugary drinks, hormones, diet, medications, dehydration, weather changes, sun, and heat. So
wow.
These all branch off. That's why when somebody says, hey, what can I do for migraines? It's like, well, do you have a while to talk about it? So when it comes to sound, I wouldn't say that sound is necessarily a trigger unless you already have the migraine starting. So if you are doing really great, it's like ULA, right? You're constantly balancing plates. That's what I've told people about with migraines. You're constantly balancing these plates to make sure that you don't get a migraine. Well, if you have more than a few kind of off balance, then you're just sending yourself you're jumping into a tornado. So sound can affect the migraine if you've already got it started. So more like the bass in the car, like heavy bass, and then high pitched noises, or music, like if it's just super loud. But generally speaking, it's not bad unless you get a migraine, unless you're already starting one. When it comes to sleep, this is the tricky part. With migraine people, you cannot have too much sleep and you can't have too little. And most things that help you sleep will trigger a migraine. So things like melatonin, even CBD, even hormones. The same hormones that help me prevent a migraine, if I take it at nighttime, they can cause a migraine. So even magnesium, even if I put
so the unwind.
I haven't taken it. I'm scared to take it.
Yeah. But what's important to know is these are the triggers, and this is how this is working for you. So each person, if you're dealing with this, it's going to be very individualized, and it's finding the balance, just like Amy said about the hormones. So, and she's going to talk here in a minute about what she's using, but she's learned through time when's the best for her to use that product or to supplement her body the way it's needed. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that this is the process that she's gone through that did not happen overnight, right? To get it figured out for her. So magnesium is a trigger for some.
Magnesium is a trigger, but this is not the norm for most people, because for most people, they need magnesium and it helps them with their migraines. So if you're the type of person who you have taken magnesium at nighttime and you sleep so great and you don't wake up with a migraine, then you probably need to do that more often, and you probably really do need the magnesium. If you're the person who takes magnesium and then you get a migraine, well, then you either need to have a lower, like I just take one pill of a Super Cal, and because it has magnesium, so I take half the dosage. So when it comes to magnesium as well, I'm going to use that by getting mineral essence, and I take that during the day. So I'm careful what I use at nighttime. I also can do half. I can do half an Immupro. So some people can take 2 Immupro. I take half of 1, and I sleep amazing, but I don't wake up with the migraine. But if I take 1 full one, then I'll sleep too hard. So sleeping, it all just depends on if you sleep too hard. So sleeping too hard will give you, can trigger a migraine for some people.
Wow.
So odors, that's a big one. So when I started to do this full body cleanse, they said you need to get out the chemical cleaners out of your house. They told me just like vinegar and water, and then, just do that, vinegar and water. So that's basically what I did for a while. Or I would just hire a maid and then I would leave for the whole day. Now, in 2010, I discovered Thieves Essential Oils cleaner. So Thieves Household Cleaner. So when I started using Thieves Household Cleaner, it was a big difference for me, because I was the high school girl that didn't have all the fun perfume, and I didn't have the smelly lotions. All my friends would go to Bath and Body Works. I couldn't use any of that stuff because it would trigger a migraine. I couldn't have candles. I couldn't have any of that. And it took me a while to figure it out, but odors are huge. I went into a really, really nice decorating store today, but she had all these candles in there. And I told her, I said, I love your store, but I can't stay in here. There's so many candles. I'm so sorry. I have to leave. And I wasn't trying to plug or anything, but all the chemical cleaners in the house, I start by getting hot and I start sweating. And then I start with this like little headache, like above one eye and then above the other eye. And then it starts to fill in like right through the center of my head right there. And then it starts to spread. It's like a virus. It just spreads in my head. Yeah. So yeah, smells
I can relate to that pressure for sure. I know exactly what you're talking about. When we would go to the mall, we have a Bath and Body Works in the mall, and I would go on the other side to go past it, just because I would have that same trigger of those fragrances was just too much. So I'm sure you were super excited when you realized in 2010, not only did you use your Thieves Household Cleaner, but you were able to have a diffuser and new fresh aromas in your house that weren't going to throw you over the edge.
Well, and I think that's why I became such a fan of essential oils. I was introduced in 2010 because I went to Lori Gaska's house and she had thieves diffusing. And I walked in and I instantly was like, oh, I don't know if I can stay here. Like, because I was just trained. I was so trained to say, no, I can't do candles. I don't know what you got going in here. But I stood there for a second and I was like, well, I'm really confused because it's actually not bothering me. And then, so the more I sat there and I was like, this smells really good. I don't understand. This is not hurt. This is not affecting me. And then she tried to get me to smell the lavender. And I said, oh, no, definitely cannot do lavender. I absolutely cannot do lavender. I know that for a fact. And she said, I promise you, this is not the same lavender. So I literally did one of these things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can smell it. I want to lick it. I mean, it was so amazing. Like I couldn't believe that I could finally have something good smelling in my house. I literally just licked the lavender. Well, at least I'll be good with all the stuff blown in the air. So smells are a very huge thing. Lights are a very big trigger. If they're the fluorescent lights. So in the classrooms, this is interesting. A lot of teachers will actually cover their fluorescent lights because they are aware of the fact that fluorescent lights are not good for our eyes. And I love those teachers. I'm like, oh gosh, high five to you. But a lot of them are doing them for themselves. But if your kid has a teacher that doesn't get headaches, then they may not understand. They have fluorescent lights. Well, if your child is getting headaches, it could be from the fluorescent lights at school. And I know that for a fact is true for my son. He would come home from school with headaches all the time. And it was just those fluorescent lights. Now also, flashing lights too. If I see too many flashing lights, like that's going to trigger a migraine. And in fact, I literally just watched a girl get a seizure test the other day by a neurologist, and I was in there with her, and they put the lights right in front of her eyes, and then they did the flashing, and they were scanning her brain, and she literally within seconds went right into a seizure. So, wow. and a migraine is a seizure of the brain. So that's lights. Alcohol is another big one. Okay. My mom sells really good quality wine that doesn't have all the sugar and blah, 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 all that stuff. There's none of the preservatives. She does wine shop at home. I still cannot even drink her wine. I mean, wow. It's amazing. And I'm more sensitive than most people. There are other people who can have her wine and they can't have other people's wine. But I can't even have that wine. So alcohol is very big. Even vodka, if it's a wheat-free vodka, if it's a potato vodka, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that my body does not methylate properly. So it is not detoxing properly. That's the whole problem, is that 40% of the population is walking around with this MTHFR gene mutation. And this mutation that we have is in different degrees. So if you have a double mutation, which is what I have, then you're not going to detox properly. And so you are going to be more affected by chemicals, alcohol, than most people. And that is what it is for me. It's like I put in alcohol and it just sits there. And then sugary drinks, like, forget it. I mean, I went to a party and they had our amazing Ningxia Red, and then they put pineapple in it. And I was tasting really good, but normally I can if I go to a Young Living event, I will chug the Ningxia Red, like when they have the slushy bars, and I can drink them one after the other because our Ningxia Red is not sugary. It's not sugary. So it's sweet, but it's not sugary. I can take them back one after the other. Love them so much. Well, this time I started to get a headache and I'm like, okay, something's not right here. And well, I go and check, and sure enough, they had added pineapple juice to kind of give it a little pineapple-y flavor and, you know, make it spread a little further.
Yeah.
Yeah, to make it like a punch. Well, I couldn't do it. And it was already triggering because of that sugar. So it was 2005 or 2004, whenever I went to do this cleanse, that hands down sugar was 100% the absolute worst migraine trigger ever. And the closer you get towards the end of the evening sleeping, the worse it is. So if you are ready to go to bed and you need a protein shake, you better look and make sure that that protein shake doesn't have any added sugars. If you want to have yogurt or dairy, well, guess what? The milk turns to sugar. It still has the carbs. I've had a salad at dinner one time where they put dried raisins. Like the raisins didn't even have added sugar. They did dried raisins. Horrible migraine the next day. It's the sugar. And you have to start memorizing the way that each migraine feels. So a sugar migraine feels a certain way than one from odors or one from sleep. They're in a different part of the brain. And I've memorized all of them.
Sorry to cut you off there. Would you recommend for people who are dealing with headaches to journal, to log when they have, either they start logging their food, or when they have a migraine, go back and look at what they've ate in the last 12 to 24 hours or what they've been exposed to? Is that something you did, or would you recommend that? I think that might be beneficial to people.
Yes. I mean, having a journal is definitely key, and you want to keep a journal so that and with your sleep, and then also females, it's very important that you keep a app. I keep an app called Flow, and Flow keeps track of my cycle so that I know when to start upping my my hormones that I want to use, or my progestins plus. And
let's talk more about that. How does that work for you?
Well, it's good because that was next. So okay, this is what I was pumped. Now, this doctor that I went to, they were really great. They got me a good clean diet, but they were pumping me full of the bioidentical hormones. Okay. So you've got the doctors that are going to load you up on, and I mean, bless their heart. I love doctors. They're amazing. You're in the medical field. We have I'm not doubting any of this, or downing any of this. Okay. I love the doctors. However, my particular doctor had me pumped up full of medication. Okay. I wanted to get off of it. So then I went to a more natural route. Well, they still pumped me full of other things that were still compounded in a pharmacy that were a little better, but it was still putting me on something that wasn't, that I didn't necessarily need. We needed to find out the root of what was going on. Okay. But I was closer. So everything's about stages. So what I figured out after going to some fertility is that my fertility doctor was like, okay, look, the reason why you're not getting pregnant is because you are already taking so much progesterone that your body already thinks that you're pregnant. Like, you have so much progesterone in your body. Your body already thinks you're pregnant. How are you going to get pregnant? You have more progesterone than a woman who's about to deliver a baby. And I'm like, oh, is that why I'm so swollen and tired all the time and want to eat? So, I mean, while they were doing a good thing, it was just a little too much. So what I told him was, well, I'm scared to get off this progesterone because I've been on it for 8 years and it helped me with all my migraines. And he said, well, okay, if progesterone helps with, if the absence of progesterone is the trigger of migraines, then every menopausal woman would have migraines who used to get migraines. He goes, what it is it's the change of the hormones. See, this is why I do like to go to see doctors, because they help. It's the fluctuation. It's the fluctuation of the migraines. So he said, your body is reacting to the fluctuation. So what you can do is try to smooth out that fluctuation. This is where you can work with a doctor and get your tests and stuff like that. Or you could do some trial and error. So that is where I am at now, because I had breast implants and I recently got my breast implants taken out. I was getting to the point where I was reacting to everything. Remember, I told you, you have all the plates, right? You got to balance all the plates. And if one plate goes off, then you're fine. You're still balancing everything else. Like I'm people who have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm talking about one of those circus guys that are spinning plates. Okay. Well, if one of them, yeah, if one of them it goes down, it's fine. You get it spinning again, you're okay. Well, with the breast implants, and because of that gene mutation I was talking about, I am extra sensitive to chemicals. So I had hundreds of chemicals in my chest of those silicone breast implants. So already my body's freaked out. Already my body's freaked out. And so it was getting to the point where everything was triggering. No matter how good I was being, I was getting triggered. Every time I would fly, I don't know, it was like the air pressure, it would like cause something to happen, and I would get super swollen. And then I would get these massive puking diarrhea migraines once we got to our destination. So I ended up having my breast implants taken out. After I got my breast implants taken out, my face went, shoo. I lost a bunch of water weight. Inflammation went way down. And I had like no migraines for 2 months solid. Well, my hormones weren't right. Like I had, like it threw my cycles way off. The surgery threw my cycles way off. Well, my cycles started to pick back up again. Well, then they went haywire. And I started having a period every 20 to 22 days. And then what was happening is I was getting a migraine every time I would ovulate and every time I would start my cycle. So my body was reacting to these. And this is, you know, I just got my breast implants taken out in March. So what was happening is I was having to get an IV because I would be puking and having so much diarrhea that I know y'all want to know that. I totally forgot that this is live streaming on Facebook. Anyway.
But this is real. I mean, this is what's really happening. These are the symptoms, and you're not the only person that deals with that. As a nurse, I've talked to lots of people who deal with migraines, and it's not just a headache, and that's what people don't realize. It's so much more. It has such a bigger effect on your whole body. So I'm glad you're sharing and being open and vulnerable about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, usually what will happen is the first day, the migraine will be so bad. And then by the second day, now dehydration has set in. And I didn't exactly put this together until the last time that I had an IV. So I've done about 4 of them where I've had the IV, and she came over and she comes to my house and she gives me an IV, and she does have to end up putting Phenergan or Zofran and like Toradol in there for pain reliever. And my vein was collapsed and she couldn't get it in there. And then finally I was starting to hydrate, and she said, "You were so dehydrated that I couldn't even get the vein in there." Well, I started thinking about that for a second. We were watching Hawaii Five-0, and she was the character on the show was dehydrated because it was one of the shows, and she started hallucinating. And I looked at Trey and I was like, "Hey, I guess I just always thought that I was dreaming or something, but like I've heard voices." Like he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I've just heard conversations, like people talking to me when I'm down and in a migraine, because I'm literally laying there for 8-10 hours, just laying there in pain, and you're in so much pain you can't sleep. And the deeper pain comes after the dehydration has now set in. So now the original trigger is not even your migraine anymore. It's now the dehydration, which that brings me to the next point. You got to stay hydrated. So, but yeah, it was getting to the point where I was starting to hallucinate and I just literally put that together. So what I have figured out about hormones is that I have found the most, the best thing to do. So we have this product called PD-AD20 that Young Living has, and it's going to be back in the end of the month of October, which I'm kind of like rationing my pills out right now. But basically, it has pregnenolone in it. And I talked to my doctor about it, and I showed it to him. He said, "That's great." I said, "Well, why don't you all prescribe this?" And he said, "Because it's really hard to get good quality pregnenolone." And I said, he goes, "Keep taking it," because he said it's a precursor. So basically, your body takes it and then converts it to whatever it needs, whether it be estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. Because I was trying to take high doses again of the progesterone, and the high dosage was triggering a migraine. So it wasn't the progesterone that I was needing, but I can't play this guessing game. So instead I'm like, here's some pregnenolone. Do what you want with it.
Right.
So now I use the pregnenolone every day. And I use it in the morning because it was causing me to sleep way too hard. Like I would sleep so hard that would trigger a migraine. So now I just take it at night and, in the morning. I take it in the morning, and it actually helps with testosterone too, which is great, and your memory. So that's also amazing. And then as I get closer to my cycle, I start really pumping up the Progessence Plus. So the Progessence Plus is a bioidentical progesterone, and that really, really, really helps because your progesterone is dropping as your cycle is about to start. And so your body says, "Oh, your progesterone is dropping, time to start another cycle and clean out the house. No baby here," So you just, if you are a person who reacts to the progesterone, and that could be any PMS symptom, then you just give it some Progessence Plus, and it's kind of like a slower decline versus like, drop. So my cycles have literally, over the course of 2 months, have returned to when I was in my 20s. It literally has felt like I was in my 20s. And this past month was the first month that I didn't get a migraine or headache at all. Last month, all I got was a tiny little headache, like around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. No big deal. Drink an iced tea. You're good to go.
So I have a question for you. So you said that you pump up the Progessence Plus. So do you use it daily anyway, or how do you use Progessence Plus?
Okay. So I can say what I do, right? I can't.
Right. We're only talking about your personal testimony.
Okay. So, people do off-label use all the time, right? So it says to use topically on your skin. So I put it topically on my skin. Well, I do that all the time, every day. But right about 5 days before my period, I will start putting 5 drops in a capsule, and I'll take it at night before bed. And there's a difference of me doing it in a capsule versus putting it under my tongue. I don't know why, but the capsule, it works for me. So that is what I do. It doesn't say that on the label, but I trust our products, and I've been using Progessence Plus internally for a really long time. So that's just what I do.
Yes. So in regards to that, if you follow Dr. Dan Purser, who helped formulate Progessence Plus, you can get some information from him about that off his Facebook page or many of his books, and he can explain usages for Progessence Plus outside of the guidelines that we discuss a whole lot. But in your personal testimony, that has worked for you, and that's awesome. I'm definitely going to be changing my routine based upon that information, just if nothing else, applying it more frequently right before my cycle. Right now, I have it on a roller filament on the top of it, and I put it inside my ankles once a day. But I'm going to make that shift because I too deal with migraines. I'm not at all like I used to since I've started using Migraine and Copaiba, which are free this month if you spend enough on your ER. But so I've used that. But last month, or this month actually, I had a horrible migraine with my cycle, and it was just stress of life too can affect your migraines. I don't know if you had that a lot as well, just general stress. But I'm definitely going to be amping it up a little.
I like the rollerball filaments. I really, really do. But I find that for Progessence Plus, you can't really measure. So from my understanding, 1 drop of Progessence Plus is like 5 milligrams of bioidentical progesterone. So it's a USP pharmaceutical grade progesterone. So 1 drop is 5 milligrams. And if you're rolling it on, you really just don't know how much you're getting.
You're right. That's so good. Okay, so I'm changing everything now.
So, God, what did you say? You mentioned, oh, I can't remember. Maybe I'll come back to it. Okay, so stress. Yeah, so the last year, I've never really understood stress headaches. I never really understood it until last year. It was in August of 2019, and I was helping a woman who was homeless, and she had a baby, and I was helping her in the hospital. And it was the day after it was all done. She had already left the hospital. And I was standing in my kitchen, and I had a lot to do. My husband was out of town, and I had all 3 kids. And I felt inside my body, my blood boil. I felt a pressure come from down low, up, all the way to the top of my head, and then this fullness in my head. Never experienced that in my life. So when people say that makes my blood boil, I think I get it. That stress brought it up. So from right then in that moment, I canceled all my plans. I canceled everything that I had to do, deadlines or whatever. And I just said, I got to take a day. I have to de-stress. I can't live like this. I never want to get used to feeling like crap. You get used to feeling like crap, and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And, there's so many, your life coach, not you, but people don't listen to their bodies. And we're told, push, you got to power through, you got to suck it up, you got to do it. Well, at the same time, it's like, you've also got to be kind and loving to yourself and take a moment to breathe and quiet and say, what do I need? What do I need right now? Man, today I'm grieving. I'm grieving the loss of my mother or my aunt. I'm just going to not do crap today. You know what?
Right.
I can't work today. I'm going to call in, or if you have this opportunity, maybe do it on Saturday. So stress management is huge. Yeah. And
give yourself some grace and everything, right? If we give ourselves a little more grace, our stress level is going to be better. And that helps us just to take better care of ourselves. And like you were discussing, hydration is so important. Staying hydrated, drinking half of your body weight in ounces of water is minimal hydration, right? That's just optimal. If you have any other stressors going on in your life, whether you're increased exercise, increased just physical activity, working out in the yard or something where you're sweating more, increased stress, a GI symptom, like you were saying, you vomiting and diarrhea, totally depletes your body. And you can trigger a migraine or make one even worse. So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That's the problem, is that too, is when you have a migraine, it's really hard to drink because it goes through all the different stages. So in the beginning, you're trying to eat because the act of eating kind of helps the migraine a little bit, but drinking hurts. And then you want to maybe try and drink caffeine. Well, caffeine depletes, and it yes, you're drinking water, but you're also at the same time, it's counterintuitive. So
right, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. So once the migraine is full blown, every sip of water hurts. Every sip.
Yes.
These AirPods Pros are horrible. So yes, hydration is huge, and you really have got to drink filtered water, because if you're drinking water that is tap water, my son is so aware of it now. Chlorine water from school, it's instant migraine. So he has to have a large container and put filtered water in it. So we have a really great water system on our house. I mean, these things cost money. It's an investment, but we don't have headaches anymore like we used to.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a filtration system as well, and I can't even stand to rinse my mouth in the bathroom with the water straight out of the tap. I have to go into the kitchen and get the special out of the special faucet. I'm like, I wish I could afford to put this special faucet on all of our sinks someday.
Well, the best thing to do is to have a whole house water filtration system, because to be honest, it's actually, if you had toxic water, okay, that was full of all kinds of junk, you're better off drinking it than taking a bath or a shower in it, because what our skin does is like a sponge, and you're literally just soaking it all in. So you can do it for about $3,500. You don't have to get those $10,000 ones.
Right.
But the whole house is the best.
Okay, I'll work that in my budget for next year.
Yeah, there you go. So, what's next?
I don't know what's next. I think you've really answered all of my questions. We talked about your triggers. We talked about how you've changed things and how it wasn't overnight. For years, right? So this started way back in childhood, and then really you started getting aggressive with it in your late teens, right? So on figuring out what was going on. And you've really learned that your hormones play a huge factor, and then the additional stressors outside. So sound, the appropriate sleep, how to take your supplements correctly. And that's going to be very individualized from everything that we know. We all have different chemical makeup. And what you do each day affects your body's chemistry. What you put in it, what you put on it, what you're around. So those are all huge things to take in effect. So if you're dealing with migraines, again, we're just sharing Amy's testimony and a little bit of some stuff that I've dealt with as well, but mainly Amy's testimony on what worked for her. So make sure that you work with your physicians, write down, look at what's going on in your life and your triggers. And if you get a migraine, look back and see what happened the day before. Were you tired? Did you drink enough water? If you have someone on your life or your team, for those of you who are Young Living members, like have a Zyto scan or an iTovi, those are some great resources to use as well, to look at where your body is at and in regards to balance. Do you have any closing words, Amy?
Yeah, I will actually, this is huge. Like, I kind of saved the best for last.
Okay.
So diet is the number one out of all of it that's going to cause the most dramatic effect on your migraines. Anything that is inflammatory is going to basically start to rock the cradle. You've got to take out the inflammatory things, because once you're adding something in, it's like it's a domino effect, with all of it. I'm not using metaphors here, but I'm trying to think of the best thing. Once you have one thing, it can be a domino effect where everything else affects it. So as long as my diet is on point 95 to 99% of the time, I can afford to every now and then slip a little something in, but it's got to be a little something, and it definitely can't be at night. The weather changes is a huge trigger for a lot of people. They can feel the barometric pressure drop, and then it triggers the migraines. That goes away. If you already have a body that's not inflamed, you're not going to react to the weather. But if you are reacting to the weather, you already have that underlying inflammation. So the biggest things that are inflammatory are going to be wheat, corn, sugar, dairy, alcohol, artificial flavors, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners. Yes. Even if it says natural flavors on the container, natural flavors, non-natural flavor, like it's a proprietary term, so they can hide ingredients in it. Then there's also a lot of people have an allergic reaction to chocolate. Not everybody. Now, if you can eat something that's combined with all of those, that's the worst. So think about ice cream. It's sugar, it's dairy, and it's gluten. I haven't had ice cream since 2013 because I threw up for about 3 days from it. The horrible migraine. So you get to a point where you're over it. Like you don't want to, your health is worth so much more. And I used to have people, they'd see how strict I was and they're like, how can you live this way? This is so restricting. And I'm like, I'm actually living for the first time in my life. Like, this is living. If you only knew the things that or where I was, that I am every day, life is amazing. I don't have to live like I used to.
Right. That's a huge thing. And when you get to that point, it makes those decisions. Like you said, the ice cream wasn't worth it anymore. Right? Like, there's alternatives. There's other things. If you're going to have a treat, you know that it's not going to be the ice cream, because it's no longer a treat when you're laid up for 3 days and can't function, can't be a mom, can't be Amy, can't be yourself, right?
Right.
Yeah.
My favorite kind of desserts, if I do want to have dessert, I will look for raw, vegan, and no chocolate dessert. So if it's raw, that means that they're not using any sort of wheat flour. If it's vegan, that means that there's no dairy. And usually if somebody's raw and vegan, it's not going to have junk ingredients for the most part. So if I'm going to have dessert, it's raw and vegan and it doesn't have chocolate, then I like it. And people need to remember too that our artificial sweeteners are huge. Like the aspartame, that's really, 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 really a migraine trigger. So Sweet and Low, Equal, the Splenda, all of that, like Crystal Light, like I was sold on essential oils because Lori put peppermint in my water, and I hadn't had flavored water in so long. Like it was so good. Like I could not I couldn't remember the last time I had yummy tasting water. So now I can put orange essential oil, I can put lemon, I can put citrus fresh, sleek, peppermint, spearmint. So you could lime, you could do all these things. So that's a huge thing. So sun and heat, that's the last two. Sun and heat. So we have a boat. If we go on the boat, I have to make sure that I stay under the umbrella most of the time. If I have a hat on, and there's a lot of heat, a hat plus heat is too much pressure on the head, and that is a definite migraine trigger. So I have to stay under the umbrella, and then people make fun of my sun visors all the time because I always have grandma sun visors, but they're not going to be making fun of me when I'm 50 years old and my skin looks good. And then I won't get a migraine. Yeah. Hey, you know what? It's free highlights too, because you put your hair out the visor and then your hair gets sun, and now you have highlights for the whole winter. Hello.
Oh, there you go. Multitasking.
Okay, so I think that pretty much covers a lot of it.
Awesome. Well, if you guys who are watching, whether you are on the Zoom, we'll get off here in a second and chat, see if you have any questions. But those who are on Facebook Live watching this video, or any other media that we end up getting it put on, if you want to ask questions, ask these questions. You can reach out to Amy or myself, and we will help you the best that we can, sharing our testimonies. And we just thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Amy, for sharing your info with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.